My name is Ian Malacromi. My project is called At a Standstill, Investigating Houston Traffic Density. So for background on this project, as I'm sure all of you also experienced during the pandemic, with everyone staying at home, there were dramatically less cars on the road, and every year since then it feels like there have been more and more drivers on the road and traffic has been getting worse and worse. Obviously this has a fairly large impact to drivers and commuters, both in terms of time wasted and mental health. And it is also an interesting and complex issue that can be impacted by a number of factors. So I had a number of questions. One of them being, has there in fact actually been a significant increase in traffic since the end of the pandemic in Houston, or is this all in my head? Has there been an increase in Texas Department of Transportation road projects that may contribute to traffic? We've all been stuck in traffic with lane closures and whatnot. I wonder if there is some correlation to be drawn between active traffic projects, active road projects in Houston and traffic density. Has there been an influx of residents to the Houston area that may lead to an increased number of drivers on the road? We've heard of a lot of people moving from higher tax states like California to Texas. There's been a lot of sort of immigration into the state from other states. So perhaps that's impacting it, and more people in the city, more drivers on the roads. And then as sort of a sanity check to sort of make sure that we're not coming up with something out of thin air, how does Houston's traffic trend compare to Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin, or other major metropolitan areas in Central and East Texas, just to sort of get a sense of if this is a overall trend or if this is something that's more specific to Houston. So my hypothesis is that we are going to see an increase in population and an increase in active construction projects that correlate to a higher traffic density in the city of Houston. So as far as the methodology, for my data sets, I was using TxDOT data for the annual average daily traffic data, as well as the DCIS project data. So that pertains to the active and closed projects, road projects that TxDOT has been doing all across the state. For population estimates, I was using Texas Demographic Center's data, and then for visualization, I was using Tableau. In preparing this data for visualization, I used a number of tools and features of Tableau. I had to pivot some of the fields in some of the data so that I could arrange in some entries by calendar year. I created some custom calculated fields, extracting dates from some of the strings that were what the data entry for the DCIS project data used for their dates. And then, of course, I use some filters, which Tableau offers as an option to filter specifically for counties. So I used Harris County as a sort of stand-in for Houston in terms of the data that we were looking at. Bexar County for San Antonio, Dallas County for Dallas, and then Travis County for Austin. And then there were a number of other interactability features that Tableau offered that made this project go rather smoothly. So looking at Harris County, for our daily traffic, our average annual daily traffic, we can see that we have data going back to 2005. But really looking at 2019 onwards here, we see that in 2019, we were sitting at a little bit over 30 million vehicles registered by the measuring devices, a pretty substantial drop-off in 2020, and then it came roaring back and far surpassed where we were in 2019, in 2021 and onwards, and we see that it's been kind of a steady increase year over year, and now we are sitting at about 25 million more vehicles registered than we saw in 2019. So that is to say, it's not in my head. It does seem like there are more vehicles on the road. Texas Department of Transportation road projects in Harris County. We have data going all the way back to 1981. Because this data set included active and closed projects, I decided to do a stacked bar chart where the green is going to indicate active projects and the red indicates closed projects. So in places where you have red and green bars, that means that the total height of both bars combined is the total number of projects that began in that year. The green ones are the ones that are still active as of the collection of this data set in 2025. So you see that we still have some projects from 2012 and 2011 that are still active, but a lot of the older projects, especially 2010 and earlier, have thankfully concluded. But we do see that there were nearly 120 new projects that were registered in this data set in the year 2025. So it does seem like there is a substantial increase in active road projects in Harris County. And then as far as population is concerned, this seemed to be a much less dramatic increase. We were sitting at about 4.75 million in the earliest part of this data set, which is the 2020 census. And we see that there's been about a 5% increase over time, about 250,000 people estimated added to the population of Harris County. This seems less likely to have a correlative effect on traffic, but then again, 250,000 people is 250,000 people. So our sanity check, looking at our other major metropolitan areas in Texas, in Travis County, Dallas County, and Bexar County, as far as the average annual daily traffic totals, we see sort of similar patterns here, although it is important to note that the scale is dramatically different for a lot of these. Notably in Travis County, even though we see a sort of similar pattern, it is on a much smaller scale. Their pre-pandemic levels were sitting at about 14 million vehicles compared to Houston's 30. And so, this 4 million increase or so in between 2024 and 2019 is a much smaller percentage increase than the 25 million increase over 30 that Harris County saw. But we do see about a 66% increase in Bexar County and a near doubling in Dallas County. So it does seem like there is sort of general traffic increases across the board. As far as active projects from TxDOT are concerned, there are substantially less projects occurring in these other counties. You see the scale over here on the sides, the y-axes, 70, 60, 50 as opposed to 120 was what we were looking at before for Houston. So certainly Harris County seems like there is a lot more active construction, and perhaps that has some tie-in to our perceived increase in traffic. And then as far as population estimates are concerned, in Travis County and Bexar County, we see actually slightly higher rates of population increase based on comparative size to Harris County. Dallas County stayed more or less about the same, so it does kind of look like population may have less to do with our traffic woes based on this data set. And then what we can get from this. As far as the questions we asked at the beginning, yes, there are more cars on the road. The volume of measured cars in Harris County has increased by about 25 million. Yes, there are more active road projects that are happening in Harris County. And we also did see a population increase by about 5% in Harris County. That being said, based on this data and with our sort of comparison to other major metropolitan areas in Texas, it does not really seem that we can conclusively draw any correlation between those observed factors and an increase in traffic. As far as future work is concerned, one major downside of the data sets that we were working with is that they did not actually measure car speed. So car speed data would be very helpful to actually track slowdowns. An increase in number of cars measured does not necessarily mean what we perceive as traffic. If an additional 25 million cars pass by their measurement points, but they're all going 60 miles an hour and everybody's going with the flow of traffic, then that's not really traffic. That's just more cars on the road. So finding a data set that includes car speed would be really helpful in sort of pinning down like what we colloquially refer to as traffic, and then also some survey data of popular sentiment on the status of traffic in Harris County or in these other counties would be very useful to include in this as well, to see if the public perception is in line with what the data bears out in terms of the physical realities, or if a lot of this is just sort of a psychological effect of people not wanting to be on the roads post pandemic after staying at home. Um, Thank you very much for watching my presentation, and I look forward to seeing you else.